Yeah, what's up guys, and welcome to a brand new video over on the channel. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be covering the gamble investments you can make going into this weekend. As always, if you guys are interested in signing up to Sorare, there is a referral link down below. Once signing up and winning 5 cards on the bidding market, you will win yourself a free tradable limited card. Don't overpay to get this free tradable limited card. It's only worth about £2 to £7. On top of that, you do have to be 18 to play Sorare because it is real life money, and that real life money can be lost as well as it can be made. Finally, if you guys are interested in watching me do, I guess, this investing or scouting live, I do stream it every day from 6:30 over on my Twitch. So what is a gamble investment? Well, a gamble investment is a player that is going to be used for Underdog Unlimited, so they've got to have an L15 under 40, but at the moment, the L5 isn't quite demanded. An L5 that's demanded is normally 49 plus, I'd say, maybe 50 plus. And at the moment, they'll be on like a 42, 43. But if they go and score a 50, 60 this week, they'll be in that L15 under 40, but with a L5 obviously being higher than 50. A really good example of this was this guy last week, who was one of the investments I called as a gamble investment. And he actually, he did go and put a stunning game, an absolutely stunning game. What did he get? He got a stunning game of 71. When I called him, he was, I think, £7 if I'm not wrong. How much was he here? Yeah, it was about £6, £7 when I called him. If I'm not wrong, that is literally one of my viewers buying him, probably off of me calling him as a gamble. Obviously, he played very well, and he's gone from £7, and at the moment he's going for about 22, 23, so he's about a 3x. And what we're going to do is, obviously, not every player works like this. There are plenty of players I've called and they've played rubbish. Luckily, they don't really drop much. Basically, they don't drop much in comparison to what they rise. It's just like, you have a good game, 3, 4x. You have a bad game, 8. You lose like 20%. You can see how it's a gamble, but it's, I guess, in favour of you with the outcomes, I guess. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically go and find a bunch of players that fit under these outcomes of, if they have a good score, they'll rise nicely. If they don't have a good score, it's not the end of the world. So we start off here with our first player, and that is a Greek person. Now, really nice and cheap. He's coming in about £3, £3.50. I'd imagine you'd be able to win him on masses on the £3 if you were to mass send over some trade offers. Why is he good? At the moment, L5 or 45, L15 or 40. We go look at his scores, and he's about to go and lose a 29. Because he's about to go and lose a 29, his average, once he loses that 29, is actually 49.5, which means he'd have an L5 of 50, which is the point at where, you know, they're demanded. But obviously what he's got to do then is pull his next game has to be a score of 50. Now obviously if he keeps a clean sheet, that shouldn't be too hard. As long as he has, his all-rounds aren't overly amazing, I'll be completely honest with you. But yeah, as long as he keeps a clean sheet, he should be all good. Now they do play against Freiburg, who are about 3 or 4 places above them in the Bundesliga. So what's the odds of that? Maybe not too amazing, but a score of 50 isn't, you know, it's not unrealistic basically. If he obviously goes and pulls a score, or if he can score up to 61. If he gets anything higher than 61, he won't be eligible for the under 40 L15. But again, as long as he gets between 50 and 60, he's looking good. Even if he goes and pulls, I think, like a 48 or a 49, it will still average just above 50, which is decent. So there is our first investment. That is a Greek player for £3 from Bochum. So it's a bit of an interesting player here. We've got a Gian Gallardino, which is, again, another player I called last week for being someone good to invest in. He's actually absolutely banged. He's gone from about £6, which at the time probably was buyable about £7. I believe this is literally a viewer buying. And yeah, he's all the way up now, selling for 14 quid. Well, actually, he could do really well next week. You will have to buy him after deadline, because deadline he'll start dropping. But he's about to go and lose this score at 12, which means that his new average is going to generally become, what is it, 53.6. So he'd be on for a 54, you know, sorry, he'd be on 53.1, sorry, is what he scored. So he'd be on for a 53 pre-game. Now, obviously, he was quite a bit, well, what's a bit awkward is the maximum score he can actually get is a 53.6. If he gets over a 53.6, he exceeds the L15 of 40. The crazy thing is he could get a score as low as 37 and still get an L15 or 5. Now, I don't know what the odds on him getting a score below 53 are, because I'll be at 53.6 is the highest he can get. Because he's had some really good games, even without a decisive, he managed to pull in a 67 right there. So if this guy's pulling, again, I don't know if I'd buy this guy pre-game. It'd be one of them ones I'd probably have a tab open with the game again, if we're getting into like the 60th minute, no decisive, you know, looking on a really solid, I don't know, like 40. 40, he's very unlikely to exceed the 53. At 40, he's still going to go and pull in a score of about 51 L5. Bear in mind, a lot of leagues are ending. You know, it should be really, really good. But yeah, probably one more I'd wait for the game. Or if I can get in a really good price, because obviously I'm not going to go and pay 20 quid for a gamble player. So then get on to the next player who's on great form at the moment, and that is Alex Muyl. Again, you're going to have to probably buy him after deadline because he is, well, quite inflated, to put it politely. We'd hope he'd go maybe back down to the prices of like probably 9 quid or something like that. But yeah, his form is absolutely crazy at the moment. Where's he playing? He is a midfielder. He's gone and bagged a back-to-back goal with an assist, which means he's ended up with these scores right here as 70, 60, 50, 16 and 37. Now this guy could easily be a 2-week hold, because this week he's going to lose the score of 37, which means he'll have an average of 49. When he loses the score of 16, obviously it depends how he plays next game, but his score will probably average out something about 55 to maybe even 50, you know, even 58s, 59s. So this guy could be a decent 2-week hold. Obviously it depends how well he plays in his next game. Now the highest score he can get this week is 70.1, so very high. All he has to do is score a 53.1 to get an L5 of 50, which, you know, increases the demand quite nicely. But I mean, if he goes and pulls out another great score, that's going to be, yeah, his form is going to be brilliant. And there should be a nice rise. So again, I don't really think he relies on, I guess, the L5 to be good, because he'd have just a really impressive L4, and I think people could ignore that 16 and he could rise quite nicely, given he gets, you know, probably decisive, or just again getting this sort of 50 all-round score. Really nice cheap player right here. You got Lucas Lima coming in at £2.50. I guess he's been benched a lot, and now he's gone to the squad. He's gone and pulled in a 49.3, a 54 right there, and a 41. Now, he's not losing any low scores, but what these are is these basically just balance out the average. So if he could go and pull in a score of, like, say, 50 or even, like, 55, that would push his L5 over 50, which would be decent. He's also got a decent amount of wiggle room to get a high score, because he's about to lose the score of 49. So he can get 49 at least, and then I'd say up to about 50, 60 before he goes over the L15 of 40. But yeah, nice little players made into the squad rotation as of recently. Surprised he's not a little bit more expensive, to be honest, because 49 actually isn't too bad, especially for £2.50. But again, another nice cheap investment right there. Obviously, gambling on him performing a little bit better than he has in at least the third game. I mean, if he goes and pulls another 54, that's not bad, and I'd see some decent demand for him. Again, not really a player that I'd buy pre-game, but someone I'd keep an eye out for is one of our investments from this week, Robbie Robinson. Sounds like a Disney character. Well, right now he's got an average of 51. He can get a score up to 68.5. And yeah, obviously he's got an average right now of 51. So, decent average at the moment. Figo pulls in a decisive. That pushes average up to about 54, 55, which will be really good. Obviously, as well, it'll create decent demand. Only problem is he can only get an all-round of 8.5, obviously, if he goes and pulls a decisive. So, again, maybe not so much a player I would buy pre, but a player I'd keep an eye on when they play, if you're awake at whatever crazy time in the morning that the MLS play. So we get to a player we had, I think, on the list like 2 weeks ago, and he's come back around like a revolving door. So we have got ourselves Mr. Christopher Werzenig, who's, I think, playing right now in the, for the Champions League and Europa League spots in the Austrian Bundesliga. So the stats for him are, right now he actually averages, due to this 81, he averages out a 50 at the moment, which is quite impressive. Once he obviously loses the 34.6. What he needs to do is he needs to get a 46.2 to get an L5 of 50 in his next game. He can get up to a score of 88.5, so decisives. I mean, he hasn't actually had a score above 88.5, so you've got nothing to worry about that. It's just hoping that he gets a score of 46.2, because, I mean, it's happened before, actually a few times without decisives, and I mean, in the end of the day, he's not that expensive of a gamble at the price of £4. I actually own a few of him. I might sell him if he rises a little bit more going into deadline, or we can just hold him as a gamble. But there we go, got Mr. Christopher Werzenig. Add another gamble investment. So sadly, this guy isn't really going to end up having a good L5 because there's 2 low scores, but because this guy's got a decent L3, if he actually goes and has another performance, he will be eligible. It's just Sadly, his L5 won't be very appetizing. The only way he's appetizing is if you actually look at him and just see he's been so consistently getting 50. And then obviously he's going to pull in a 60 there. So, would it be someone I'd gamble on? It'd be someone I'd keep an eye on, because again, he can get quite a high score, which is decent. He does lose, I think, the score of 23, but I think he can go and put in like a 50-60. Yeah, and still be pretty well demanded, because again, you can see that he's had a decent run of play in the last 3 games. So a little bit of an interesting one, because this guy's L15 isn't under 40, but this is a guy who I thought would do quite well because he had quite a high L5, and he actually has done really well this week. Well, he could do even better next week, to be honest, because he's got his, at the moment he's got his 1, 2, 3, 4. He's about to go and lose that score right there, which means if he has a good game this weekend, his L5 is going to be looking absolutely cracking. And bear in mind, at the moment, because we're in the back end of the European leagues, the consistency in teams playing has completely dropped off, because you've got teams like catching up because of not playing because of maybe the bug or so on. You know, basically you get teams just catching up in the games they haven't played in the league. So, which gives you less choice. But he goes and plays this week, which means he can take out that 30 score. And he obviously goes and plays the following week, which means, you know, there'll be demand for him going into that week. And another player we got is Kelvin Leerdam. Right now, he has got an average of 50. He's got an L15 of 36, so he's got plenty of room to get a good game. If he goes and pulls in another 50 or 55 even, decent demand, because his L5 will be 60%, and he would have consistently been pulling in 50s. Shame... Oh no, he doesn't actually have 1 game left of the season. I'm not quite sure why it's set like this. He also does have more games. I'm not quite sure why it's set like this, because they're not on any winter break or anything. So if I'm missing anything, do just say. But yeah, 2 decent scores as of recently. Hasn't been much demand this week. But yeah, definitely if he pulls in another 50 or 60, there can be some decent demand going into next week's deadline. And that's all she wrote. Not too many investments this week, but because again the European games are all over this shop, because basically they have to play this weekend and next weekend. Some teams play this weekend, don't play the next weekend. Some teams play this weekend, but then the next game's midweek. Some teams don't play this weekend, but play next weekend. And some teams... so they're all over this shop, which is good, I guess, because it means that the pool of players good for underdog and the specialist is smaller, but it just means you don't have as much to go and invest in for it pre. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, where I'll probably wrap up and talk about how well this week's underdog and specialist investments more went for you guys than they did for me.